Hey, everybody, and welcome to another segment of AstrologyAnswers.com's weekly forecast. My name is Terence. The week begins on Monday, January the 9th. And on the 12th, Mars, that's been retrograde for 2.5 months, is going to go direct. A little bit more on that in a moment. Let's start with Monday, January the 9th. The moon that sets the public tone and reactions is in extroverted, outgoing Leo. Some good energy to start the new work week. And pleasure-seeking Venus will be in harmony with Mars. But Mars is slowing down. It'll stop by Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesday, it's at a full stop. Thursday, it will appear very slowly to be inching forwards. When a planet is changing directions, as it's slowing down to go retrograde or slowing down to turn direct, that degree that that planet is at becomes really intensified. And on Monday, the Mars, it will be in harmony with Venus. So that could trigger a lot of passion creatively or romantically. Now, the moon, however, will be in a difficult aspect to restricted Saturn about 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Maybe that's now you're just hitting a wall, you're getting exhausted, or maybe with the Mars retrograde with Venus, you were a little bit too assertive and you got some pushback resistance. The moon will go void, of course, as I talk about every week, when the moon is no longer making aspects to other planets until it changes signs. So because the moon is not activating any planets, there's no activity. So the energy is flat and unproductive, and it's good for just staying the course, but you don't want to launch anything new. Launch a new website, start a new job, etc. Now that moon in Leo will be void, of course, 5:52 p.m. Pacific time into Tuesday, the next day, at 7:15 a.m. Pacific time. Now, on Tuesday, the 10th, the moon goes into Virgo at 7:15 a.m. for those next couple of days. But the sun is in Capricorn, and Capricorn and Virgo are very sensible, practical, conservative energies. So they're in harmony with one another, and there aren't any other planetary events going on Tuesday. So the Virgo energy is very work-oriented, service-oriented, could be a very favorable day to be, thinking about body maintenance, eating better, exercising more. All that is that Virgo energy. On Wednesday, as Mars is definitely at a standstill at 8 degrees of Gemini. So if 8 degrees of Gemini makes any important contacts in your chart, you're going to be feeling this big release because that Mars is about ready to open up. But before I get to Thursday, Wednesday, the moon in Virgo will be in harmony with communication Mercury. Mercury is also the ruler of Virgo. So that moon Virgo, the moon in Virgo in harmony with Mercury, is going to peak around 7 a.m., maybe the next hour or two after that. Great for meetings, for discussions, for writing, for learning. Earlier in the afternoon, Pacific time, now the moon is in harmony with progressive, innovative, inventive Uranus. So a lot of ideas are really opening up and brainstorming, good for lots of meetings, making decisions, but don't make any really important life-changing decisions because Mercury, the planet of decision-making, is still retrograde until January the 18th. Now, on Thursday, as that Mars goes direct, it could be releasing a lot of pent-up energy because Mars is the warrior. It's ambitious, it's assertive, and every 2 years when it retrogrades, all that energy gets turned inward, which can create overall this irritability, impatientness, exhaustion. However this is playing out for you individually with the Mars in Gemini, it's starting to release a lot of pent-up energies. You might be watching this week, could be the entire week, with the international news, where with Mars, there may be more breakout of war because Mars is the warrior planet. There might be some major violent protesting. That's all on the negative. But you could also be feeling that you're more motivated to start the new year and get things going. However, the moon will go void, of course, again, 3:06 p.m. Pacific time till 6:57 p.m., where it then goes into Libra. So the void, of course, again, and on late Thursday, it's a time it's good for resting, staying with the routine, staying with the course. Don't introduce anything important new, especially with Mercury in retrograde. Now, on Friday the 13th, remember when Friday the 13th used to be a scary thing? Well, the moon that went into Libra the evening before, so all of Friday into Saturday, the moon that sets the public tone is in Libra, sociable, charming Libra, diplomatic Libra. And the moon will be in harmony with Mars late morning Pacific time. As that Mars is starting to move forwards, here the good news is that Mars could, as it's releasing a lot of pent-up energy, even though it wants to start clearing the air and moving forwards, it may still be a little too impatient. But the moon in Libra seeks compromise, cooperation, harmony. So it's going to really help that Mars be more tempered, if you will. But there could be, in mid-afternoon Pacific time, the moon will be in a stressful angle to Mercury. So Mercury are meetings and discussions, and then the moon, you're trying to find a win-win, happy medium, but you might be feeling really anxious. Plus, that's also that Mars going direct. However, on Friday the 13th, the sun will be excellent with Neptune. And so it's a day that's the sun putting a spotlight on all things Neptune. Well, we're going into a Friday night, going into Saturday. The Neptune can represent music, film, theater. It could put a real spotlight on the imagination being swept away with film and music. On another level, it's about charity and compassion. On another level, it can really awaken more of an interest in your spiritual studies. On Saturday, the 14th, the moon continues in Libra, a very social weekend. But Venus, the ruler of Libra, Venus, the planet of love and harmony, will be in tension with Uranus. But Venus is the benefic energy. So the Venus-Uranus could, and Uranus is always the unexpected, the suddenness. And being a Saturday, going into a Saturday night, there might be an unexpected gathering of friends and partying. You could unexpectedly, especially with Mercury in retrograde, hearing from an old friend, reconnecting to an old gang of friends. So it also creatively, you're more open for trying new things, getting out of the old routine. And on Sunday, we wake up and the moon is in Scorpio. The moon in Scorpio sets this tone of wanting to look inward. I would think for most people, this means, especially on a Sunday and then Mars being released this week, it's just with the moon in Scorpio, they just want to be left alone with your thoughts, be quiet, resting, maybe even doing some preparation for the new week coming up on Monday or studies. So I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you next week with my next segment. Until then, be safe and well.